Welcome to Boring History for Sleep, where history is soft, soothing, and just weird enough to keep your dreams interesting. Tonight, we're stepping back into the noisy, muddy world of medieval taverns. But beware, this wasn't your cozy local pub. Between the sour ale, the fistfights, the fleas, and the fermented eel soup, you probably wouldn't last a single sober day. So tuck in, close your eyes, and prepare for a tale of terrible hygiene, terrible manners, and terribly strong drinks. The tavern door opened with a reluctant creak, as if it too had been drinking for hours and now struggled to stand upright. The heavy wooden slab, swollen from damp and wear, scraped against the dirt-caked floor as a gust of sour air spilled out into the cold night. A wave of heat, thick with the scents of roasted meat, spilled ale, unwashed bodies, and ancient smoke hit you like a mug to the face. It was disorienting. Not the kind of warmth that welcomed you in, but the kind that clung to your clothes, your throat, and your dignity. You step inside, not because you want to, but because in this century, you don't have many other options. There's no Starbucks around the corner, no cozy cafe, no Wi-Fi. The tavern is the center of social life. It's where deals are made, rumors are born, and someone is always nursing a black eye from last night's misunderstanding. You try to find a clean spot on the floor to stand, but realize quickly there is no such thing. Everything is sticky, spongy, or suspiciously soft. A puddle by the door is either old ale or something much worse. The sound inside is deafening. There is no music playing from polished speakers, only the chaotic orchestra of life being lived too loudly. A woman in the corner is laughing like a hyena choking on mead, while two men shout about sheep ownership over a half game of dice. The bartender, who may or may not be partially blind, slams wooden mugs down on the counter with the kind of force that suggests years of pent-up rage, or just arthritis. The bar itself is dark with the stains of centuries. You'd like to imagine it's just beer, but deep down, you know better. On the walls hang the trophies of years gone by. Rusty swords, a dead boar's head, a mouldy tapestry that might have once told a noble tale, but now simply tells the story of mildew. Cobwebs lace the beams above you, undisturbed by even the wildest bar fights. Rats skitter between the shadows, unfazed by your presence. They live here too. You're the visitor. They've seen worse. A group of hooded men sit in the back, eyeing you like a new card in a loaded deck. Their table is stacked with empty tankards and half-eaten trenchers of bread. You realize quickly, you're the only one here without a drink in hand, which means, to everyone else, you're either a monk, a spy, or worse, someone with standards. A sobering thought, quite literally. You shuffle toward the bar, but not before dodging a staggering man who looks like he hasn't slept in a month and smells like he hasn't bathed in a year. As you reach the counter, the bartender doesn't ask what you want. He just stares. You realize you're supposed to know the routine, coin first, questions later. You drop a few grimy coins on the table, and without breaking eye contact, he fills a cup with something dark, foamy, and possibly moving. You take a breath. This is it. Your first drink in the medieval tavern. The first of many, or the last, if you're not careful. Because here, people don't just get drunk. They get tested. By the drink, by the crowd, by the very building itself. And you're not ready. Not yet. Welcome to the tavern. You'll be lucky to last a sober hour. You stare into the wooden mug that's just been slammed in front of you. The liquid inside is not clear. It's not even the color of anything you recognize. A murky, brownish blend of foam and grit swirls on the surface like it's reconsidering its own existence. You hesitate, and in that brief moment, the man beside you lets out a thunderous laugh, the kind that rattles your spine. He slaps you on the back, nearly sending the contents of your stomach into early retirement. "First time?" he shouts, his breath a mixture of old onions, bile, and something metallic. Before you can answer, he grabs your mug, takes a long swig, and hands it back to you with a grin. "That's the good stuff," he says, wiping his mouth on his sleeve. "Brewed this morning. Or maybe last week. Depends if you trust Bertha's nose." Bertha, you quickly learn, is the woman behind the curtain near the hearth, stirring a cauldron and cursing in 3 languages. She brews most of the tavern's ale, mead, and wine, though wine is a generous word for whatever ends up in the cracked ceramic jugs. Grapes may have been involved at some point, but now it's more like sour vinegar with dreams of grandeur. And it's strong, fermented until it's angry, with floating bits of who knows what swimming inside like drunken minnows. Water, you see, is not safe. Not here. Rivers are contaminated. Wells are unreliable. Parasites dance in clear liquid like it's a ballroom. So instead, everyone drinks alcohol, from toddlers sipping watered-down ale to the elderly downing mead for their aching bones. It's not a luxury. It's medicine. It's hydration. It's survival. But what exactly are you drinking? If you're holding ale, it's probably been made from barley or wheat, mashed and boiled, then left to ferment in a barrel that hasn't been cleaned since your grandfather was born. It might have hops in it, or not. Depends on whether the brewer could afford it. Most of the time, bitter herbs like wormwood or yarrow are thrown in instead, giving the drink a taste that sits somewhere between earwax and regret. It's flat, warm, and surprisingly filling. In fact, ale is often called liquid bread, which sounds poetic until you realize it's probably the only bread you'll get today. If it's mead, you're drinking fermented honey, often mixed with herbs, spices, or crushed berries. Mead is what people imagine when they think of medieval drinking, golden, sweet, thick like syrup. But the version in front of you is more like honey left out in the sun, then stepped on. It's gritty, acidic, and powerful. You don't drink it to enjoy it. You drink it because your hands are shaking and you want them to stop. And if by some dark twist of fate, you've been served tavern wine, then God help you. Wine in a medieval tavern is rarely aged in a vineyard. It's mixed with water to dilute the sourness, then spiced heavily to disguise the rot. It's the kind of drink that makes your teeth hurt and your gums bleed. But at least it'll get you drunk enough to forget that it tasted like fermented foot. Fermentation, of course, is not an exact science in this era. It's more of a gamble. Yeast comes from the air, and bacteria is just part of the flavor. People drink around the mold, scoop out the bugs, and swear that the floaty bits are good for you. No 2 mugs are ever alike. One might make you sing like a bard. Another might leave you blind in one eye. But no one complains. No one sends anything back. Complaining in a medieval tavern is a fast track to losing your front teeth, and there's no dentist to fix them. So you take what you're given. You drink deep. You hope for the best. The man beside you orders another round. He raises his mug, overflowing with froth, and toasts to something unintelligible. You clink mugs with him, partly in camaraderie, mostly in self-defense. You take a sip. It burns. It lingers. It tastes like smoke and soil. And then, something happens. A warmth spreads through your chest. The chaos around you fades, just slightly. You feel your shoulders loosen, your grip ease. You understand now. You don't drink to enjoy. You drink to escape. And just like that, you've taken your first real step into the world of the medieval tavern. Sober no more. Your stomach growls as the haze of ale begins to settle into your limbs. Instinctively, you glance around the room, hoping to find something, anything, edible. But in a medieval tavern, food is a word used loosely, a hopeful whisper, in a world where flavor is optional and hygiene is theoretical. You spot a crooked chalkboard hanging above the hearth, scrawled with something resembling a menu. The writing is half smudged and seems to alternate between Latin, Old English, and what might be someone's last will and testament. Still, you squint. Today's offerings include eel pie, boiled turnips, black pudding, stale trenchers, and house stew. The last one has quotation marks around it. You have no idea if that's meant to be ironic or ominous. Either way, you make your way to the bar again and point to the list. The bartender doesn't say a word. He just nods, disappears behind a moldy curtain, and a few moments later, slaps a wooden plate in front of you. You look down and feel your appetite wrestle with your survival instincts. The first thing you notice is the pie, if it can be called that. Its crust is pale, cracked, and looks like it was forged in a pottery kiln. You tap it gently with your finger. It doesn't yield. Inside, a sliver of something grey and shiny pokes out. Eel. Definitely eel. Possibly several eels, chopped up, spiced with something sharp, and baked with reckless abandon. The smell is aquatic. Not the fresh sea breeze kind, but the forgotten fish market in July kind. You take a bite, more out of defiance than hunger. It's chewy. Very chewy. The eel is full of tiny bones, like little needles hidden in rubbery flesh. The crust crumbles into a fine powder in your mouth, clinging to your teeth like flour paste. You try not to gag. Next to the pie is a slice of bread. At least you think it's bread. It's circular, flat, and has the consistency of sandstone. This is a trencher, a common medieval substitute for a plate, but sometimes eaten if it didn't get too soggy or mouldy. Yours appears to be several days old and could probably stop an arrow. You gnaw on a corner. It flakes like tree bark. You put it down. Then there's the stew. You give it a gentle sniff, then regret it immediately. It smells like someone boiled sadness in a pot. A layer of oil shimmers on top, like an oil slick on a puddle, and chunks of mysterious origin float lazily beneath the surface. Root vegetables, maybe. A sliver of meat, possibly rat or something just as agile. You stir it with the wooden spoon provided. The spoon cracks. You take that as a sign and move on. There are boiled turnips too, though boiled might be generous. They're undercooked in the center and burnt on the outside, like someone gave up halfway through cooking and decided to let the fire decide their fate. You chew through one and feel your jaw question your life choices. You begin to understand something important. Medieval tavern food wasn't about enjoyment. It was about endurance. About keeping just enough fuel in your body to stumble home, or at least to the pile of hay you're calling a bed tonight. Nutrition was a vague idea. Presentation didn't exist. Spices, if they appeared at all, were used to cover the taste of rot, not to enhance flavor. Most of the time, people ate whatever they could afford. And what they could afford often came with fur, feathers, or parasites. Around you, others eat without hesitation. One man slurps down the stew like it's the last bowl on earth. Another rips a piece of dried sausage from a string hanging from his belt. A woman gnaws on a roasted bird leg, feathers still attached. No one blinks. No one questions it. This is normal. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part. You're the strange one. You, with your modern stomach and your expectations. This is dinner. This is survival. And if you're lucky, you won't get sick. But don't count on it. You take another bite of the eel pie. It's still moving. Or maybe that's your imagination. Either way, you swallow hard, chase it with a gulp of ale, and brace yourself. Because the night is still young. And in a medieval tavern, the food is only the beginning of your troubles. You look around the tavern, your stomach now uncomfortably full of regret and undercooked turnips, and something starts to settle in your mind, like the dust on the rafters. Everyone is drunk. Not just buzzed, not tipsy, not a few pints deep. No, drunk in the way that only centuries of hardship, cold winters, and non-existent dental care can justify. Slurred speech, swaying bodies, sudden bursts of song or sobbing. It's not a party atmosphere, it's something deeper, something woven into the bones of the people. Here's the truth they don't tell you in history class. Sobriety was practically a health condition in the Middle Ages, and not one people aspired to. The average medieval peasant drank somewhere between 1 and 3 gallons of ale per day. Yes, gallons. Children drank it. Nuns drank it. Monks brewed it. Labourers downed it before heading into the fields, and even the village priest probably had a morning mug with his prayers. Water was dangerous, full of bacteria, waste, and rot. Ale, on the other hand, was boiled during brewing, killing off many of the nastier bugs and preserving it for days. It wasn't a luxury. It was liquid life insurance. And yet, it's important to understand that this wasn't the same as modern alcohol. The daily table ale was often weaker than today's beer, sometimes as low as 2% alcohol by volume. It gave you a fuzzy head, but didn't knock you flat unless you drank a ridiculous amount. Unfortunately, a ridiculous amount was often just another Wednesday. The stronger stuff, however, the mead, the spiced wines, the ale brewed for holidays or bad days, that was another matter entirely. Thick, heavy, bubbling with fermentation and floating debris. One tankard of it, and your night was either going to end in song or in unconsciousness. You start to notice how some of the patrons' mugs seem to steam slightly in the dim candlelight, as if the drink itself is still alive and angry. There's a reason why the tavern is filled with so many raised voices, bruised cheeks, and lurching bodies. Alcohol wasn't for relaxation. It was for escape. Escape from pain, from hunger, from grief. The Black Death had likely swept through this very town once, or twice. Life expectancy hovered around 30 years, and if you made it past 40, you were considered ancient. Every day was a roll of the cosmic dice: famine, war, plague, childbirth. And yet, here you were, alive, cold, tired, poor, and aware of it all. Of course people drank. Of course they drank like their lives depended on it. Because sometimes they did. The tavern isn't silent now. Far from it. One man is standing on a stool reciting a very crude poem about his neighbour's goat. 2 women are laughing uncontrollably in the corner, one with tears running down her soot-smudged face. A third is asleep at the bar, face first in her porridge bowl, snoring softly as a rat inspects her hair. You glance down at your own mug, your hands slightly trembling now. Not from fear, not yet, but from the realization that you're going to have to drink more. Not because you want to, but because everyone else already has. And if you stay sober in this place, you stand out. And standing out in a medieval tavern is the last thing you want to do. You reach for your drink and take a long pull. It burns less now. Your tongue is numb. You think that might be a good sign. Or a very bad one. Someone beside you starts to hum a song, low, mournful, strangely beautiful, and you find yourself swaying slightly with the rhythm. The drink dulls the sharp corners of the world, blurs the shouting voices, makes the flickering candlelight seem warmer than it is. And then it hits you, not all at once, but like a creeping tide. This is normal. This is routine. This is how people survived being alive when being alive hurt too much. Sobriety wasn't just rare, it was undesirable. The sober mind had too much clarity, too many memories, too much grief. And perhaps, in that moment, you understand what you're really escaping from. Not the noise, not the stench, not even the cold, but the crushing weight of knowing that tomorrow might not come. And if it does, it won't be much better. So you drink, because if you don't, you'll feel too much. And that, in this tavern, is the most dangerous thing of all. In a quiet corner of the tavern, the mood suddenly shifts. You hear the sharp clatter of wood on wood, followed by a string of curses in an accent so thick you're not sure if the man is speaking English or just inventing a new dialect mid-sentence. Around a squat table darkened with centuries of spilled ale and forgotten meals, 4 men lean in, faces tense, eyes darting. A game is underway, something involving dice, a pouch of coins, and a lot of angry muttering. You wander closer, pretending not to watch, but everyone knows you're watching. That's the point. Games in a medieval tavern weren't just pastimes. They were risks. They were strategies. They were how a poor man might double his week's earnings or lose everything, including his shoes. Gambling wasn't regulated by law. It was regulated by fists, blades, and the occasional broken chair. Dice games were among the most common, easy to learn, fast to play, and quicker still to rig. You see one of the players roll a pair of dice made of carved bone. They bounce off the table, land on the floor, and a small boy scurries to retrieve them. Probably a tavern boy, maybe someone's orphan. No one pays him for the effort. He hands the dice back with practiced silence. The players don't thank him. The man with the dice smirks as he tosses again. He wins. Of course he wins. The others groan, and one slams his fist against the table, rattling tankards and sending a spoon flying. You can almost feel the temperature drop. Here's what you need to understand. Medieval tavern games weren't designed for fairness. They were traps for the hopeful, bait for the drunk, and sport for the clever. Dice were often shaved or weighted. Cards, if present, were hand-painted and easy to mark. Games were made up on the spot, rules twisted mid-play, and arguments settled with fists or worse. You spot another table where a group is playing something involving wooden tokens and circles drawn in soot. The details escape you, but the tension is the same. Coins change hands. Someone accuses someone else of cheating. A woman watching from a bench lets out a shrill laugh and tosses a bone at the loser's head. Then there are the drink wagers. A man dares another to drink an entire jug of housemead in one go. The jug is nearly the size of a toddler. The challenger accepts without hesitation and begins to gulp, the crowd gathering around him, chanting nonsense, clapping, spilling their own drinks in their excitement. He finishes, staggers backward, and falls, flat as a stone, onto the floor. No one helps him. He'll wake up, or not. Either way, the entertainment value has been extracted. Cheating, you realize, is not just common, it's expected. If you can cheat and not get caught, you're clever. If you cheat and get caught, you'd better be quick or well-armed. One man with a scar across his eye is dealing cards from a worn leather pouch. He gives a sly wink to the woman next to him, then palms a card with such subtlety that you nearly miss it. But the man across the table didn't miss it. He reaches slowly beneath his coat, and for a moment you expect a knife. But he pulls out a loaf of bread. He bites into it without blinking. He's waiting. There's a strange etiquette to it all. An understanding that you can lie, cheat, and manipulate. Just not too obviously. Don't insult the intelligence of the room. Don't treat the others like fools. They might be drunk, but they're not stupid. The line between sport and violence is paper thin, and tonight it's damp and curling at the edges. You find yourself seated now, drawn in by the chaos, by the magnetic pull of risk. A man across from you grins, gaps where teeth used to be. He sets a cup between you and pours a splash of something thick and red. Not wine, something else. Game of thimbles? He asks, and before you can reply, he places 3 wooden cups on the table, hides a pebble beneath one, and begins to shuffle with dizzying speed. You lose, twice. He laughs. Want to win your coin back? He asks. But you know how this ends. Everyone knows. That's the magic of it. The loss is part of the show. The humiliation, too. It's ritual. It's theatre. And for the man with the red-stained hands, it's also dinner. Even the children in the tavern play games. Simple, cruel games. Thumb wrestling turns into biting. Stick duels end in bruises. You see a boy flick a dead beetle at another, laughing hysterically as it lands in the other child's soup. The adults don't intervene. They were once those children. In this place, games aren't about fun. They're about dominance, about release, about momentarily feeling like you have some control in a world where control is a fantasy. The dice, the cards, the tokens, they're the illusion. The stakes are always the same: coin, pride, safety, survival. And just as you're beginning to understand the rules of this world, someone flips a table across the room. A tankard flies. Someone screams. The game, it seems, has ended. Another is just beginning. You hadn't noticed it at first. The thick smoke, the shouting, the stench of spilled ale and overcooked meat, these things hit you so hard that your senses had no time to notice anything else. But now, as the din of the tavern becomes a steady, pulsing backdrop, something else creeps into your awareness. Something more insidious. Something you can't quite ignore anymore. It's the smell, not the immediate, sharp stink of the food or the sour tang of old alcohol. That's just surface level. What you're smelling now is deeper, older. It's a layering of odors built up over time, like dust on a forgotten book. A rot that lives in the wood of the floorboards, in the straw packed between the beams, in the stained fabric of the cloaks hanging by the door. This tavern smells lived in, but not in the warm, cozy way of a family home. It smells like 1,000 nights of sweat, sickness, and human desperation soaked into every surface. You shift in your seat and feel the roughness of the bench beneath you. It's sticky. Not in one spot, everywhere. As though 100 spilled drinks had never been wiped clean, just left to absorb and dry in uneven layers of misery. There's straw on the floor too, meant to cover the dirt, the spilled ale, the bodily fluids. But straw isn't magical. It doesn't clean anything. It just hides the worst of it, smothers it under a false sense of rustic charm. And when people are too drunk to make it outside, well, the straw absorbs more than just moisture. Now that your eyes have adjusted to the low flicker of candlelight and the occasional glow of the hearth, you see things more clearly. The floor is uneven, patched with old boards and even older mud. In the corners, dark stains bloom across the walls, probably a mix of soot, mold, and ancient blood. A rat darts out from behind a barrel, its eyes gleaming with a kind of confidence that comes from knowing no one here is going to chase it. This is its tavern, too. People smell, of course. That goes without saying. Bathing is not a daily ritual here. It's an event, rare and often inconvenient. A bar of soap is more expensive than a mug of ale. You catch a whiff of the man beside you and immediately regret it. He smells like wet wool, old onions, and something acrid you can't quite place. You look away, but the odor follows you, clings to your hair and clothes. It's not just him. It's everyone. And then there are the lice. You scratch the back of your neck. Once, twice. At first, you assume it's the itch of unease. But then you see a woman combing her fingers through her hair in the firelight. She's not grooming. She's hunting. Pinching tiny specks between her nails and flicking them onto the ground. A child nearby does the same, without even thinking. The fleas in the straw snap their bodies over your boots, as if in protest of your clean socks. You're beginning to understand that hygiene here isn't about cleanliness. It's about management, survival, keeping the filth at a level just below unbearable. The smell of smoke never leaves. The hearth burns constantly, fed by damp logs that smoulder more than they flame. The air is thick with it, and you feel it settling in your throat. Every breath tastes of charcoal. Your eyes sting. You blink, but the haze remains. It's not just the fire. It's the centuries of soot and sweat that no window ever aired out, no breeze ever purified. This is the price of warmth in winter, of light in darkness. Even the animals smell. Yes, animals. There are chickens nesting beneath one of the tables. A goat snoozes by the door, occasionally bleating when someone steps too close. A dog licks an abandoned bowl, growling when a man tries to nudge it away with his foot. These animals aren't pets. They're just part of the tavern. Their scent mingles with the rest, musky, earthy, and completely normal to everyone else. The clothing people wear only adds to the olfactory onslaught. Wool cloaks drenched in rain and never dried properly. Leather that's never been cleaned, just patched over and over until it resembles more fungus than fabric. Shoes that haven't been taken off in days, maybe weeks. A man removes his boot near the hearth and people nearby flinch, but no one says anything. That's just how it is. And somehow all of this, the rot, the filth, the stench, becomes a kind of backdrop hum, a sensory white noise that you either adapt to or are destroyed by. No one mentions it because there's no alternative. Baths are taken maybe once a season, if the weather allows. Laundry is washed in cold, contaminated water, then hung up in smoke-filled homes to dry. And perfume, that's for nobles and their powdered wigs, not for people who live and die within 10 miles of where they were born. You shift again, now fully aware that no part of your body is truly clean. Your hair itches. Your hands feel coated. You haven't even touched the stew again, but it feels like it's still in your lungs. And through it all, the tavern hums on. Laughter, shouting, toasts, fights. The stink doesn't stop them. It doesn't slow them down. It's part of the tapestry, part of the identity of this place. You are sitting in a swamp of humanity. And the truth is, no matter how strong your stomach, how modern your mind, or how deep your tolerance, you weren't built for this. You weren't built for the stench of survival. It happens fast. So fast you almost miss the moment it begins. 1 second, it's just another drunken argument. A raised voice, a finger jabbed into someone's chest. A mug slammed just a little too hard on a table. Then, before anyone can blink, it erupts. A wooden bench topples over. A chair crashes backward. Someone yells, someone ducks, and someone throws a punch so wide and clumsy it might have been meant for a ghost. The tavern brawl has officially begun. The tavern doesn't stop for a fight. It absorbs it, welcomes it even. Like an old friend who shows up uninvited, but always brings good stories. Fights here aren't events. They're part of the rhythm, like the clink of mugs or the crackle of the hearth. You can feel it in the air, the sudden tension, the rush of heat, the collective inhale as everyone decides whether to join in, to watch, or to dive for cover. You decide to watch, for now. The two men at the center of the storm are red-faced, wild-eyed, and wobbling. Their shirts are half open, exposing chests stained with ale and grime. One is missing a shoe. Neither seems to remember what started this. Something about a cheating game, or a stolen coin, or maybe just a look taken the wrong way. That's the thing about tavern brawls in the medieval world. They rarely had clear beginnings or tidy endings. They were emotional thunderstorms. Sudden, chaotic, and deeply personal in a way that logic couldn't follow. One of the men swings again, connects this time, and the other topples into a table of equally drunk patrons who erupt in outrage, not at the punch, but at the spilled drinks. That's enough to pull them in. More chairs scrape. Another mug flies, this one full. It hits a woman in the back of the head. She rises like a vengeful spirit, grabs the nearest bottle, and shatters it over someone's shoulder. The crowd roars. Now it's a real brawl. There's no choreography to it, no rules, just limbs and curses and the occasional kitchen utensil used with deeply creative violence. Someone swings a wooden ladle like a club. Someone else hurls a candle, which thankfully extinguishes in mid-air before it can cause a larger catastrophe. A man crashes into the bar, knocks over a jug of honey mead, and slips in it seconds later, landing hard and staying down. You duck as a stool is flung across the room. It smashes into a beam and splinters, raining dust and wood chips. You cover your drink. Priorities. In the far corner, the barkeep doesn't move. He's seen worse. He wipes a mug with a cloth that's already filthy, glancing over now and then, only to make sure the fire doesn't spread or someone doesn't try to rob him mid-chaos. The boy from earlier, the one fetching dice, is now ducking under tables, picking dropped coins from the floor with a grin on his face. Business is good. Some people are laughing through it all. Laughing like it's the best entertainment they've had all month. For many of them, it probably is. They don't get minstrels or troubadours here. They get bruises and broken noses and stories to tell in the morning, if they remember them. But not everyone finds it amusing. In a dark corner, a man watches in silence, arms folded, hood low, the type who doesn't get involved unless there's gold on the table or a blood debt to settle. You remember him. You've seen his type in every story. Quiet, still, deadly. He's a reminder that even in a drunken brawl, some things go beyond mere fists and mugs. Your gaze is yanked back to the main chaos as a table collapses under the weight of three brawlers. One rises, face bloodied, grinning, and yells something unintelligible. Another man groans, rolls over, and throws up into the fireplace. The scent is immediate and appalling. No one seems surprised. Eventually, as all storms do, the fight starts to burn itself out. People grow tired. Limbs get heavy. Adrenaline fades. Some sit down where they fall. Others stagger to their feet, laughing through broken teeth. No one apologizes. No one expects to. This isn't a place of polite resolutions. It's a place where blood and spit are just part of the woodwork. The losers lick their wounds. The winners puff their chests. And the rest go back to their mugs like nothing happened. The man who started it all, who threw the first punch, is now slumped against a wall, cradling his head. The other man is gone. No one saw him leave. Or no one cares. You take a sip from your drink, hands still slightly shaking. Not from fear, but from the knowledge that this could happen again at any moment. That it probably will. Because in the medieval tavern, fighting isn't about hate. It's about expression, release. It's a language of its own. And if you're going to survive here, really survive, not just observe, you'll have to learn that language too. Preferably before someone throws another chair. As the brawl fizzles out and the last groans settle into the creaking floorboards, a strange transformation begins to take place. It's not sudden. Nothing ever is in the medieval tavern, but it's palpable. Like a new act of a long-running play sliding onto the stage. Voices drop, weapons are sheathed, bruised knuckles flex beneath the tables, and laughter, raw and raspy, begins to float through the air again. But this time, it's different. This time, it's the sound of people returning to what they know best, talking, singing, and spinning the kind of tales that could either charm you to tears or land you in a ditch. Tavern talk, you quickly realize, isn't just small talk. It's not chit-chat about weather or work. It's an entire underground network of gossip, rumor, dirty jokes, half-truths, and twisted confessions. In a world where most people couldn't read, and news didn't travel faster than a sweaty horse, the tavern was the printing press, the newspaper, the podcast, and the therapy session rolled into one. And everyone participated. It starts at the nearest table. Two old men, missing more teeth than they possess, are hunched over a nearly empty jug, whispering furiously. From what you can gather, they're arguing over whether the local blacksmith's wife is pregnant with a nobleman's child, or whether she simply ate too many turnips. This distinction seems very important to them. Both swear they have it on good authority, but that authority appears to be a shepherd who drinks more than he speaks. At another table, a woman with a voice like cracked parchment is telling a story to a group of wide-eyed teenagers. Something about a traveling merchant, a cursed ring, and a donkey that talked in its sleep. Every few lines she pauses, stares hard at her audience, and spits on the floor. No one interrupts. Her voice carries the weight of legend, even if it's complete nonsense. In the back corner, a group of younger men are drunkenly singing a song with no consistent melody, but remarkable commitment. The verses are about a wench from the next village who supposedly kept 3 husbands and a priest, all in one house. The chorus changes every time, depending on how much ale has been consumed and how many syllables someone can fit into a line while falling over. Not all the talk is light-hearted. Some of it is darker. You catch whispers of disease in the next town, of soldiers marching under a new banner, of a noble who vanished on the road and whose belongings were found stripped, but his body never recovered. These stories are not told for entertainment. They are passed from person to person like old coins, half worn but still valuable. They carry weight, fear, warnings. And then there are the jokes. Tavern humor is earthy, crude, direct. There is no clever wit here, no subtlety. The jokes usually revolve around bodily functions, confused animals, drunk priests, and bad marriages. One man stands up to tell a joke so foul it makes half the table wheeze with laughter and the other half groan in disgust. It involves a pig, a chimney sweep, and something about mistaking a boot for a chamber pot. You try not to imagine the specifics. It's tempting to write it all off as drunken rambling, but you start to see the intelligence underneath. This is a place where speech is performance. You earn respect not through education, but through storytelling, through volume, timing, exaggeration, and knowing just when to pause. The best talkers have scars, calluses, and dirty fingernails, but they wield their words like knives and make an audience out of anyone within earshot. Sometimes, truth hides in these performances. A passing joke about the barmaid's new necklace might actually be a whispered accusation of theft. A song about a long-lost knight might be veiled mockery of the king's latest war. A tale of a haunted mill could simply be a way to warn people that a murderer walks free, and everyone knows who it is. And if you listen long enough, you begin to feel it. The pulse of the village, the true heartbeat of the people. You hear what matters to them, not in statistics or records, but in sighs, laughter, and songs. You hear who's angry, who's scared, who's lying, who just lost everything but is pretending not to care. Someone turns to you suddenly and asks where you're from. It's not just curiosity, it's an invitation. If you answer wrong, you might become the next punchline. If you answer well, they might buy you a drink. You reply carefully. A few people lean in. One nods, another chuckles. You're in. Later, someone shoves a lute into a man's hands. He tunes it poorly, plays it worse, but no one minds. The tavern is full now, not just with bodies, but with words. The kind of words that bind people together. even if they've never liked each other. The kind that make you forget, for a moment, that the world outside is cold and unforgiving. You sit back and watch the night unfold in voices and laughter, thinking, if there is a soul in this place, if there is anything like peace or kinship here, it lives in these stories, loud, lewd, and half-true. And that's good enough. The mood in the tavern has just begun to settle into something approaching peace. Not quiet, never quiet, but that specific brand of post-brawl relaxation where the air is thick with sweat and smoke, and the fireside crowd leans into their drinks like they're holding onto the edge of the world. You can almost convince yourself that things will stay this way, that the night will end in raucous laughter and the dull ache of too much ale. But then, the door creaks open. It doesn't slam. It doesn't burst. It opens slowly, almost reluctantly, as though the cold outside is hesitant to enter this chaotic, steaming sanctuary. The wind creeps in first, a sudden hush riding on its back like an omen. Heads turn. The laughter stutters, not stops, but hiccups, falters. And there they are, the night watch. 3 figures in half-rusted chainmail and mismatched cloaks. They aren't soldiers, they aren't knights. They're worse in a way. They're familiar. Everyone in the room knows them, knows what they're here for. They're part of the village. They drink here sometimes. But tonight, they're on duty. They don't speak. They don't need to. Their presence is enough. One carries a short cudgel, already stained. Another has a hand resting casually on the hilt of a dagger that has never seen ceremonial use. The third, older, with a scraggly beard and a lazy eye, scans the room like a tired teacher in a classroom full of clever delinquents. What's worse is they're not sober. You can see it in their steps, steady, but with that familiar looseness, the slight sway, the glassy look in their eyes. The scent, too, reaches you as they pass. Stale wine and something sourer, maybe breath or ego. This is what passes for law enforcement in the tavern's world. A trio of men barely held together by duty, ale, and an unspoken agreement with the barkeep. They're not here to stop the fighting. Not really. They didn't come for justice. They're here to remind people that order still technically exists, that the chaos has a leash, even if it's frayed and badly chewed. And sometimes they come because they're bored, because no one's left them bread or coin at their post, because someone insulted them yesterday and they're still sore about it. The crowd shifts. People subtly change posture, turn away, lower their voices. The man who had been juggling knives under one table quickly tucks them under his coat. A couple in the corner, who had been passionately arguing over who owed whom a pig, suddenly remember how much they love each other. A sleeping drunk is not so gently nudged awake and propped up to avoid looking like a corpse. The watch doesn't rush. They make their way through the room with the slow, calculated menace of men who want you to feel their presence, who want you to sweat a little. They glance at the broken bench, the spilled stew, the remnants of the earlier brawl. One of them grins. The older one frowns. Then they stop at a table where 2 men are still breathing heavy, one with a split lip, the other with a black eye blooming like a slow bruise beneath torchlight. The bearded watchman leans in close, says something low, too soft for you to hear. One of the men shakes his head. The other reaches slowly into his pouch, pulls out 2 coins, and places them on the table with deliberate slowness. The watchman nods. No arrests, no lectures, just payment. Not a fine exactly, more like a tax. A peacekeeping fee. Protection money. The cost of doing business in a world where justice is too expensive to be just. The coins disappear into the guard's cloak, and the men at the table breathe again. The message is clear. Fight all you like, as long as we get our share. They continue their slow patrol. One of them stops at the bar, demands a drink. He gets it, doesn't pay. No one expects him to. The barkeep pours it wordlessly, like he's pouring a cup of swamp water for a passing spirit. You sense this is routine, part of the invisible economy of favors, threats, and grudging tolerance that keeps the tavern from collapsing into absolute anarchy. But even these watchmen have limits. You hear whispers that they once beat a man so badly for insulting a noble's name that he couldn't speak afterward. Another time, they let a thief go because he swore he'd share the spoils. He didn't. They found him. What they did after that, no one says. They just glance at the stain on the floor near the fireplace that no mop or straw has ever erased. Still, their presence here is not just about fear. It's about performance. A reminder that power wears a face, and that even in a world this raw, someone is always watching, even if only to decide whether your trouble is worth the effort. Eventually, the guards drift toward the door again. They don't say a word as they leave. No threats, no punishment, just a pause, a final glance back. And then they vanish into the night, swallowed by the cold wind and the narrow alleys beyond the tavern walls. The moment they're gone, the tavern exhales. Conversations resume, louder this time, braver. Someone begins to sing again. Someone else stands on a table and attempts to dance, but immediately falls. Laughter erupts, real and reckless. You take another drink, because now you understand something deeply unsettling. Even the keepers of order are part of the chaos. And sometimes they're the worst of it. The candles are burning lower now, flickering against the cracked stone walls and casting long, warped shadows that dance like exhausted ghosts. The tavern, once a roaring storm of noise and fury, has softened into something looser, blurrier, less a place and more a feeling. The fire in the hearth still crackles, but its light is gentler now, reaching out like tired fingers toward the sleeping and the nearly sleeping. This is the hour after madness. You sit there, your head heavy, your limbs buzzing with the kind of ache that comes not from movement, but from simply enduring. The air is thick, like syrup, warm, stale, filled with the fading remnants of smoke, sweat, and something sweet you can't quite place. Maybe spilled mead, maybe old perfume, maybe both. The fight is a memory now. The laughter has thinned, and even the rats seem quieter, as if they, too, are ready for the night to end. One by one, people begin to slip away. Not out the door, not most of them. Some do, staggering into the darkness with a cloak over their shoulders and the road wobbling beneath their feet. But many more simply give up. They find a corner, a bench, a space near the hearth. A few curl up right on the floor, heads resting on bundles of cloth, or arms, or each other. A man beside you slumps forward into his own chest, his breath heavy, mouth slightly open. He'll wake up sore, confused, maybe missing a boot. But for now, he sleeps the sleep of a man who has nothing left to prove. You start to wonder where you are supposed to sleep. There are no rooms upstairs. This isn't that kind of tavern. There's no innkeeper offering feather beds or clean linens. If you wanted comfort, you came to the wrong century. Here, the question isn't where you sleep. It's if you sleep. You look around and consider your options. There's the floor, obviously. It's straw-covered, semi-dry, and currently shared with a goat, 2 rats, and a man who may or may not still be breathing. You could tuck yourself into a corner near the hearth, but that's where the real regulars sleep, the ones who helped build this place or claim they did. They'll defend that warmth with their elbows. There's the bench, hard, narrow, and sticky, but it's unoccupied. Mostly. You move slowly, quietly, and sit down. Then lean. Then finally let your head rest against the wood behind you, your legs curled in to avoid the spill zone of someone's long-forgotten bowl of stew. It's not comfortable, but it's not unbearable, and that's enough. You begin to understand, in a strange, blurry way, that for many people here, this is home. Maybe not in the romantic sense, but in the real, gritty, dependable sense. A place where the walls don't ask questions, where no one cares what you've done or what you've lost, where the rules are simple: drink, survive, and if you're lucky, find somewhere to close your eyes. You watch as the barmaid tosses a worn blanket over an elderly man who's asleep with his hands in his lap, a dog curled at his feet. She doesn't say anything, just moves on. She's done it before. She'll do it again tomorrow. There's a rhythm here, even in the mess, even in the dark. Outside, you hear the howl of wind, maybe a wolf, maybe just the night. It doesn't matter. No one moves. The outside world has no power here. In here, it's warm. In here, it's safe, relatively. In here, the nightmares don't follow you unless you bring them in yourself. You think about your day, the eel pie, the drink that tasted like boiled bark, the dice games, the flying stool, the stink of centuries, the guards with booze on their breath. And somehow, it all feels distant now, as if you read about it in some old book, not lived it. The ale helps, or hinders. At this point, it's hard to tell. A candle goes out with a soft hiss. Another follows. Soon, the only light left is the fire, dim and steady, like a heartbeat at the center of this strange, feral world. You watch the embers glow, flicker, die, then reignite. You find yourself breathing in time with them. And slowly, in spite of the hard bench and the strange sounds and the weight of 100 smells clinging to your skin, your eyes begin to close. This isn't sleep as you know it. This is medieval sleep, uncomfortable, interrupted, never quite deep. But it's real, honest, the kind of sleep born not from peace, but from pure, exhausted surrender. You let it take you. And as the tavern finally settles into silence, broken only by the occasional snore or the creak of ancient wood, you understand something, deeply, wordlessly. You've made it through one sober day in a medieval tavern. Barely, but you won't try that again.